to be the one to break it to you, but sex education of the past failed us. Because birds and bees, they don't fuck. Welcome to Birds and Bees Don't Fuck, a podcast where we learn exactly how bad our formative sex education, or lack thereof, really was. I'm your host, Ariel Zadok. I'm an intimacy coordinator and sexologist. My guest today is a clinical psychologist, sex therapist, and host of the Sexology podcast. Welcome to the show, Dr. Nazanin Moali. Yay!
Thank you so much for having me. I love your show. It's such a needed, engaging, also informative content. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That means so much coming from you because you have a great show. You've been doing it for a long time. You are such a pro in this space. So that really means a lot. And I love that so many of us are doing this now in all different types of formats because different people, I mean, this is kind of like, business 101 is like different people receive messages differently from different people. So like you can never have enough people doing the same type of work.
I 100% agree. Sometimes like people come into me, I say something that a previous therapist said, but because of a different branding, they might be able to hear it, or the other way, right? Like people go other places. I was like, oh, I just said that to them. I was just, oh, this was profound.
Like,
so
okay.
It's good.
Yeah. Which is, it's interesting. And I'm glad you said that because one of the things that I tell people all the time, because I'm not a therapist. So that's, with all of these different modalities. And I think we probably should and could talk about the differences between an educator, a coach, and a therapist, because they are all different. And a counselor is different too, truthfully. Like all of these different professions are different and have different boundaries. But one thing that I tell people all the time is that it's really like dating. Like you can't just walk into a therapist's office or even a coach or any sort of support system and expect that like immediately it's going to be a good fit.
Absolutely, Ariel. I tell people that you want to make sure that the person has the right training background and the thing that you're interested in. So they have a solid knowledge, but the rest is exactly about the chemistry. You can go to the most well-known therapist. I bet like half of us wouldn't be a fit with Freud. So it's just a matter of like who's going, what kind of vibe you experience. And that makes a huge difference. So that's why that it's really good that we have people specializing in different areas of sexuality. The training that a sex educator has, I don't have. And then the therapy is different than coaching. So it's wonderful that we have an array of options.
Yeah, because it really is. It's so much about finding that right fit because like you said, you can have all of the qualifications in the world, but if you're not vibing with that person, you're not going to be able to share openly. And especially when it comes to sexuality and trying to work through some of the things that come up with our sex, which is so often tied to like every other aspect of our life. And the sex is just like how it's manifesting. You can't, like, where are you going to go if you can't be honest? That's even when I'm intimacy coordinating, the thing that I say with actors is that the most important thing is for you to be completely honest with me. You don't have to share anything about your own life and in context to the sex scene that we're doing or your own life experience in relation to the sex or anything like that. But if I don't understand where you are and how you feel and how you're coming to the table, I can't possibly support you in the moment. There's nothing I can do to serve you if you're not being totally honest. And it's the same thing with coaching and with therapy as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think kind of like being honest with ourselves and being comfortable with the person. Sometimes we know our boundaries, but we're not comfortable talking about what's happening with the coordinator, with the therapist, or a partner. So feeling that vibe and chemistry and openness, that really helps people to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah, and so one thing for me is that communication because as a person coming from communications, 20 years of working in production teaches you how to communicate really well. So that is one of the primary things that I do help clients with and help people in general with. And I'm wondering in your practice, where do you feel like communication sits in the grand scheme of things?
I think for many people, the communication, especially for relational aspect of things, when people come for couples therapy, sex therapy, and over like life relational issues, communication is the key, right? We all have our preferences. Of course, we like things and we dislike things, but the way we're communicating that with the person makes a huge difference because we don't want to be misunderstanding or kind of create this rupture in the relationship. So I think that is really, really important. Oftentimes I have clients that come in and the initial call, they say, oh my God, I have this fetish. I feel like if I share that with my partner, she's going to leave me. But when we are in the room, like when they are communicating in a way that's like we're coaching them and teaching them, the partner is receiving that okay, right? So sometimes
Yeah.
just a matter of like having the right tools and having the courage.
And I think so much of that also comes from experiences in their past of people yucking their yum. We say that a lot, like, don't yuck someone's yum. And that can come through in a facial expression. Like, it's so small and nuanced, but when you are sharing something as vulnerable as that and you see your partner's face cringe, that's why I try to teach people when your partner or really anybody is sharing something that they're into or that they desire or that they fantasize about, even if they don't want to bring it into fruition, be mindful of your face. Like, pay attention to what your face is doing because we are taking in these messages in all the different ways. It's not just the words that you're saying, it's the tone that you're using, it's the eyes that are where your eyes are going, it's what your face is doing. So communication, we're communicating with like every aspect of our being. Even your energy shifting is communicating a message, and so many people are fearful of that because maybe past experiences with that partner or likely other partners too. So it's like you gotta, your face is doing stuff.
It reminded me of a conversation I had with a supervisor. She was big on feedback after session. After each session, she has this short survey to ask people, how was the session? How is our relationship? And one time she said, like, I got this feedback. I thought the session was excellent, but the clients like ranked it to 5, 6, so in the middle. So she asked her about it. I was like, what was it about the session? I thought like we were going deep. The person said, it's about that face you make. And then she was like, she's so open to receptive. Oh, show me. And then she went home and she showed it to her husband. It's like, my client, this is what my client said. And the husband said, exactly, honey. That look is very condescending.
Yeah, we don't know what our faces are doing, and when we're talking about communication, we are so heavy on the words, but it's not just the words. And then if you even take it into the consent conversation, so many of us grew up in an era where we were never using words for consent. The can I kiss you? Can I touch you? Do you like this? Is this okay? That only just started happening what, like a few years ago. I'm in the mainstream, I mean in kink communities, in the non-monogamous communities, that's been going on for a long time because it's just how we have to operate, and not always but generally speaking. So the general public, they're kind of, everyone else is coming up, and obviously that's thanks to me too and a lot of things that have changed in our society, but we all grew up with that type of communication. So yeah, your face is always doing stuff.
I think when I grew up, kind of going back to your conversation, that like,
Yeah.
what if you're not saying no, if you're not shouting or not fighting the person, then that was consensual.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? There's also the other aspect of it where it was like this idea that the woman says no and the man pushes past that until it's a yes, or like that persistence wins, or like you have to say no so you don't seem like a slut, and then eventually you say yes, or like these messages are so mixed up in our brains that it's no wonder men today specifically are like so afraid to do anything even if they have the consent. I mean, I see that playing out with intimacy coordinating. Obviously I see that in real sex as well, but definitely on set because it's a whole I mean, now we're at work, so it's like a whole different level of that. But it's no wonder there are so many people, especially in the younger generation, that are like, no, it's like nobody knows what to do, but we could just talk. It's okay. We can talk. Do you have a lot of younger clients, like Gen Z client? Is it Gen Z? Whatever's under millennials. I don't know any of the generations.
A lot of them are millennial, but like I have some Gen Z clients, and it's so interesting to me how their perspective changed from the time that I was growing up. I loved all of these movement around consent, around communication. even therapy, like for my younger clients, like young 20s, like their therapy is part of something else that you do. Like you go to the gym, you come to the therapy,
Mhm.
and that's what you do. But my clients that are older, it just feels like, oh, things need to be broken. If I'm going to therapy, this marriage is failing. So I think I love how things are evolving.
Yeah, that and also at least the perspective when I was growing up was like that's a luxury. We can't afford that. That's so expensive. Like I mean, and I grew up in a house with an addict. Like my brother's an addict. So like everybody in that house needed therapy. My sister, she went on her own and she has been in therapy for like years and years and she's actually going to school now to be a therapist to help people with addiction. So she's amazing. But it's just like the culture of pre 2000s probably was like, this is for rich people and we're not rich people and we're not broken. Either you have to be really broken or you have to be rich and broken, but never just for maintenance. But therapy is maintenance.
Hmm. And mental health is not a luxury. It's a necessity.
No.
It's a human right. And pleasure is a human right, right? So many people think about, like we have to, as long as you're surviving, you're okay. And
Mm.
that's just not a way of living.
Yeah, and especially now and today, and specifically with the kids that grew up in Gen Z, they have only known trauma. It's like every 5 years, there's like some huge catastrophic thing in the world, maybe 10, like 5 to 10 years, every single every single 5 to 10 years. My nephew was born in 2000 in 1999, so his entire life and his sisters that were born after him, because that's like my little reference point of like they're the 20s. Every 5 to 10 years there's a huge global crisis going on. So that's a lot for a child to grow up in, even if you're not hyper aware, watching the news, paying attention. We're, again, like that nonverbal communication, right? Like we're getting the messages from all the adults in our lives.
Absolutely. And our nervous system is bombarded with these like traumatic images. I love that some people put trauma warning, but like all around, like when you open your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you might get a very horrific video
Mm.
and it's just like in your face. And sometimes we think they're not as impactful, but it's addition of all of these negative encounters that can create a kind of an imbalanced nervous system.
Yeah, it's the compounding of all of it, isn't it?
Mm,
It's not just one
absolutely.
thing. And just like you said with survival, the different side of that is like it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. We're just trying to get to the next day. We're just trying to, get to the rent, get to the money, like get to food. So it's a lot. Growing up now is a lot. I feel bad. Even though we're adults and we're in it too. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Iran. It's such an interesting story, speaking of trauma. So I was
Yeah.
born in Iran right after Islamic Revolution and during the war, Iran-Iraq war. And newer generation, when they think about Iran, they think about, oh God, this country that like people are very religious and are very conservative. And when you're talking to someone like 60 years old and above, they have completely a different image of what Iran looks like. My mom was like highly educated. She was a head of cheers and she was an editor of magazine growing up. And my whole family are atheists. So after the revolution, it was like really hard on my family, and my mom had this kind of mental health issues. Long story short, as it relates to sex education, my mom, I feel, was conflicted. Like I was
Mm.
growing up in a community that was very, very sex negative, very, very have this idea patriarchal that sex is after marriage and it's good, like best case, it's good if your female partner experiencing pleasure, but it's an addition to male's kind of sexuality. And my mom was like such a modern woman and so she didn't tell me anything. That's how she resolved it.
Yeah.
All of my sex education came from, she had a beautiful series of French erotic movie, black and white.
Wow. That's beautiful.
It
Oh my
was,
gosh.
discovered it when I was like, I don't know, like 5 or 6.
Yes. Oh my
It
God.
was
That's the best porn discovery story ever. Like French erotic.
black and white. And I was surprised. I thought that's what sex is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Wow.
yeah, that was interesting. And she had tons of book. But what's interesting that the book she had was for pre-revolution. So it was older way of women's depicting sexuality in 50s. Right. So even
Mhm.
when I was older, I thought, oh, you should not show your enthusiasm about sex because that's going to change the guy's mind. I think you're a slut, which is like so not updated. But again, I just didn't have the proper sex education or any sex education beyond that French
Yeah.
erotic movie.
Well, I mean, better than American erotic. Much better than what we had here, that's for sure. So, did the schools teach you any sort of sex education, reproductive education, bodily, like anything about your bodies or anything like that?
It's ridiculous. No. And I know for like, so in Iran, the schools are segregated. It's all girl
Mhm.
and all boys school. So they don't teach anything. I was a designated sex educator of the school with all,
Wow.
with
Wow.
all the book that I read from 1950s.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyone who had a question, they were coming to me. And my husband, he went to the all boys school, and he said that when he was 10, someone asked about kind of like sexuality and intercourse, and the guy was so open, he started talking about it in a proper way. And the next day, the guy was fired. So
Yeah.
it's just like really like you should not go there.
It's wild how many stories are like that because, obviously I'm talking to everybody about their stories. And that is something that comes up more than once that a teacher spoke honestly about sexuality or about masturbation or about bodies or just about, and like they were honest and they were fired. It's like, or there was one that like she talked to think about pleasure or something like that. And that was somebody's first experience with pleasure was like, pleasure gets you in trouble. That's it. And she did grow up in like a positive home, but that's like the messages that we learn is that like you're going to get fired. If you talk about this, you're done. Like your job is done. You disappear.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting? Because then in that context, I moved here when I was younger. I was a teenager, so I wasn't sexually active with a partner then. And the only experience that I had with sexuality was like sexual harassment or sexual kind of
Mm,
like fondling, all of these negative things. So
yeah.
not having sex education, being exposed to this kind of community of people like taking advantage of young women, it was just like I had such a difficult time with sexuality because like I didn't connect that to pleasure. So, and that's just so important for people to know the whole spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, our bodies experience pleasure for a reason. Like if we weren't supposed to find it a pleasurable thing, then it wouldn't feel good. Which for unfortunately a lot of people it doesn't feel good, which is why we want to focus on the pleasure because it is supposed to feel good. And if it doesn't feel good and if it's painful, that's not normal. I was absolutely one of the people who thought that I was broken, that this is just what sex is, that sex is never going to be pleasurable. I didn't even understand that it was pleasurable because I didn't experience that. And so many people with vulvas have that same experience. And if you're not learning, hey, that's something we got to look at that. We have to look at why that's hurting because that's not what your body is supposed to do. And so there is a problem, then you just never know. You live through your whole life gritting and bearing it, like literally gritting
Mm-hmm.
with your teeth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And many people don't think that's a disorder, right? They think
Mhm.
like, you know, sex is hurtful, painful sometimes, and that's something that you endure. Or if I have
Mhm.
a sexual issue, because they don't have the sex education, including myself, you think that that is something that is kind of not fixable. So I think
Yeah.
I know when we met before, I talked about my own experience of how I discovered sex therapy because sex was so painful and I didn't know sex therapy existed. So after years of couples therapy, I went to sex therapy and that sex therapist changed my life. I was like,
Mm.
oh, you can change your relationship with pleasure. So I think that's why like podcasts like yours, when you're talking about these things, it help people to see that there is potential for change. Like I'm struggling because of my past and things can be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I that's why I became a health coach initially, because I had all of these problems that were all in my reproductive organs. So like I would have pain during sex, and I would get UTIs, and I would get yeast infections and all of these things, and I was just like, this is just what's normal. I have sex, I get a yeast infection. I have sex, I get a UTI. Like, I mean, I've been to so many urgent cares, and I have had so many drugs in my body resolving these things, because he was just like, well, this is just what happens. And not saying that it was terrible every single time, but like that, like I did just feel like, well, this is just my lot in life. This is what it is. And then I saw a health coach for something different. I think it was like she was doing like these Mayan massages, like this very specific
Mhm.
massage. And she did do, there is a uterus massage, but I had an IUD at the time, so I couldn't get that. So I was so bummed because I really wanted that. But she was the one that said, hey, let's try taking some of these things out of your diet for 30 days. Let's see how you do. And like so much changed for me, including my pleasure, including how my vulva and I communicate, because that's another piece, right? Like our bodies are always talking. We're talking to each other, and our bodies are always talking to us. And making those changes changes everything, changes everything.
Absolutely. You brought up such a great point that kind of going to the history of kind of going back to consent. Some of my
Mhm.
female clients, they had like experience of sexual abuse and
Mm.
assault, and they want to override it because they don't want to be a victim. But then they're struggling during sex because our body remembers. Like when
Yeah.
there is some challenge, when we have a painful sex, maybe even if you're enduring, if we're saying that that's okay, it's going to impact our experience with pleasure, and then that
Mhm.
might impact your desire. So everything is connected. And what a beautiful story of like you were able to kind of like change, make changes on something else, and it directly impacted your body.
Yeah, because bodies are like that. And for a long time, I think I had a negative relationship with my vulva and my vagina and all of that because of that. And it was just like, whatever. But I learned in time what a gift it was that she's communicating to me. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
a gift that she tells me what's up all the time. I have HSV too, and I rarely ever have a breakout. And that is because of my diet or an outbreak. But when I do, it's because I'm acting a fool. Like it's because I'm not taking care of my body, or I'm under like some super high stress, or maybe I was with someone that was like very like bad sex and it was not a good match, and she's going to pop up like 2 weeks later like, "Hello ma'am. That was a bad idea. So let's not do that anymore." So we're able to change our relationship with the communication that we're having if we're willing to pay attention, because our bodies are always talking to us. And sometimes, like you said, it's about overcoming the trauma and assuring your body, this is safe. We are safe. This is okay. Trust in me, the brain part, to tell you that you can relax, and this is a safe space. And other times it can be your body being like, hello brain, you're not paying attention. So I'm going to make you pay attention right now. And it took time, but I learned to see that as such a gift. It is such a gift when you can actually learn the language of your body and have that communication back and forth.
Absolutely. I see it a lot with my cisgender male clients around erectile unpredictability. Like, first of all, with erectile unpredictability, it could be medical reasons, there could be so many different things. But at time, my male clients are not into the experience. They're pushing themselves to
Yeah.
have, right? They sometimes feel like, oh, when the opportunity of sex is presented to me, I have to go for it. But their
Hmm.
dick says, no, we're not doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, you got to listen to your dick, man. And also redefine what sex is, because so
Hmm.
often, and I also love, by the way, calling it unpredictability, because that's what it is. It's not a dysfunction. Your penis is working the way that it's meant to work. The predictability of your hard on goes down as you age, because that's bodies. So again, like we just have to learn how to talk to our bodies in a way that we're listening and we're taking in the information, or we're telling them this is safe. Like that, it is a two-way street. It's a two-way communication path. But so much of that is redefining what sex is, because your hard penis is not required for sex. That's a bonus. There's so much that you can do with a flaccid penis that feels really good And hey, maybe the blood starts flowing again. That's great. But redefining what sex is so impactful.
I agree. And desire and arousal sometimes doesn't go together. Exactly what you said. Like I have clients that they have high desire for the partner. They really want to kind of have experiences. And for a number of reasons, their blood flow and sometimes just purely blood flow is not cooperating. And I think
Mhm.
having other options in the menu that can help people to have more exciting and diverse sexual experiences. Because sex is like for people often have meaning beyond that, what people think about. Like it's climaxing and that's it. But it can be
Mhm.
so many different things for so many different people. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and the idea that you have to climax during sex is just not good because you don't. You can have such a pleasurable experience that both people or all people, depending on how many people you're with, feel totally satisfied. They feel complete, they feel satisfied, everybody had a good time, and nobody came. And that's fine. That's not a problem. Like, where's the problem? The completion is when you feel good and you feel like, okay, I'm done now. I feel good, and an orgasm is not required to get to that point. So, so you transitioned from your therapy was with eating disorders first, and then you transitioned into sex therapy. And so, what was that transition like for you as a practitioner? I know for yourself, I think it sounded like you went to sex therapy yourself, but
Hmm.
what was that like in your like actually doing that?
Well, I think that's just such an interesting experience I had. Like what I learned is from even childhood. I started talking about sex because I felt like I had an information that other people didn't have. And as a therapist specializing in treatment of eating disorders, I always felt that you gotta ask about sexual health of people because
Mm.
your relationship with sex is your relationship oftentimes with pleasure. And if you're not connected with your body, if there are things challenging around your sex can be indicator of other things that are happening. And what I discovered is when I started asking people about sexual health, they had so many questions. That's all they wanted to do. They wanted to kind of get a proper education about sex and about what can they do to improve it and change it, which was very surprising to me. I figured, okay, there is a need here, like people coming in for treatments of something that's life-threatening, and so you still find this desire. This is something I want to talk about. So that's how I felt that, okay, I'm going to start my podcast so I can teach my own clients. And then from that, then I started getting more sex therapy clients. I was like, okay, so I need to get more education on this. That's how I got like training and became certified.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you started your podcast just to be like, we got to get this information out there. I mean, I guess that's what we're all doing, but yeah. And so, what have you seen the the correlation in like the healing from eating disorders and sexuality and just anything you want to share about that journey?
You know what's interesting, especially for many women, vulva owners, sex is about what it looks like. They learn about
Mm,
sex from porn and they're kind of thinking about, in order to do sex quote unquote right, I have to have this kind of body, I have to make this sound, and they're just so disconnected with what really sex is, like how you feel inside. So, and I think it's really connected with many of my clients who are struggling with eating disorders, right? I think about that one end of it. It's like, I don't want any pleasure. I want to have certain kind of body. So I will be perceived sexy. But when you are starved, then that's not going to help you with being able to have a healthy desire just physiologically. What
hmm.
I see my clients on that part of the spectrum is when they start the healing journey, their sexual self get awakened. I have clients that they've been in relationship marriages 10 years, 20 years. Many of those relationships been sexless. And then as they recover, they discover themselves. Like they become unapologetically sexy. I was like, okay, this is what I want. This is what we're doing. And that changes the dynamic because the partner never experienced the other part of this person that they married or they're in the relationship. That can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on the relationship. It's not a bad thing for the person. I'm always excited for them to make these changes. But with recovery, you might need to change things, friends, relationships, lover, and that could be part of it. On the other part of it, I have clients that they have struggles with regulating with pleasure, right? So I think that in life we have to have a balance of our higher self, a super ego, and hidden ego. So there's at times there needs to be time for play and party and pleasure. There needs to be time for life. But my clients that, for example, they struggle with bulimia, they have this kind of like pattern that often I see that they don't allow themselves to experience pleasure. And then when the pleasure, like there's opportunity for that, they just go all out and they feel shameful. And then that kind of start this cycle of feeling bad about pleasure and feeling loss of control, which at times we see when they learn to give their body the pleasure. They're not starving themselves of food, sex, enjoyment, but they are kind of having a more balanced perspective. That's also helped them with kind of like controlling their urges to binge and purge. And that's also something else that I see. And our culture with my client with binge eating disorder is just so contradictory as far as the messages it gives, right? One is like we can always see this advertisement for fast foods that there are these sexy women having this triple cheeseburger in
Mm-hmm.
a sexy
Yeah.
way. We're pushing that, and we're saying that you have to look like a Norwegian model. So when those things often don't go together for most of people, so people are conflicted. So they feel like broken. They feel like they're just not doing it right. When in reality, going back to the information, we're not getting the right information about how to take care of our body, our information about pleasure, and all. I tell my all clients the same thing I say to my sexual health clients is that pleasure is good, but you get to choose how much of it you want to feel, in what context you want to experience. So you are curating that. So we don't feel like powerless to pleasure. Is that something that we're inviting it?
Yeah, and I would also think when it comes to binging, it's a different form of pleasure. It's not necessarily that deep, authentic, soothing pleasure. It's that quick fix, this, the addiction pleasure, and which is different. It's you're getting that dopamine hit, you're getting that serotonin hit, you're getting all of those things that are triggering, but it's not I don't want to say it's not real pleasure, because to a degree it is, but there are different types of pleasure.
Yeah, and what's aligned with your values. And that's not values as far as morality. Like, what's a life worth living for you?
Mm.
And am I doing this in this moment is aligned with that or not? Right. So in my own value system, pleasure is important. So sometimes prioritizing that is part of my taking action based on the life I want to live. But it's really important for people to define that for themselves and kind of examine it. Is it aligned with that, or it's pushing me away from the value system that I have?
And we're also, especially as women, like taught that if you value pleasure, like that's you're bad. Like you can't, like how dare you value pleasure? Like that's not a value. You need to value, hard work and family and religion and whatever. But like you can't like pleasure is not a value, but it very much is. To how you experience pleasure is, I mean, it's actually interesting. So when I first started working with one of my therapists, we did an exercise, and for me, pleasure is one of the top values, because there are so many things in life that are unpleasurable, that we can't help, that are traumatic, going back to everything that we've been talking about earlier, that are really difficult, whether it's society, our families, the religion we're in, our origin home, our job, our money, whatever it is. There's so many things in this life that are so very difficult and so deeply unpleasurable that I try wherever I can to experience pleasure. I try to prioritize pleasure wherever I can, because if I have the opportunity to create pleasure and make something a pleasurable experience, I'm going to do it. Like, why would I not? If it is something that's within my control to make nice, I'm going to make it nice. And he found that so interesting because so few people, I guess, do like prioritize pleasure in such a way. And it was true. It's truly one of my top values because, I'm gonna, we're all gonna die at some point. So like, I wanna make it nice. I want to make it nice while I'm here.
And what's wrong with that? Like, I think pleasure
Yeah.
gets a wrong rap. People feel, oh, you're just like so shallow if you want a pleasure or slut. But what is it that it's bad about experiencing pleasure? It can enrich our lives. It can enrich our relationship. We often learn more when we're playing. So I don't know why people are just so against pleasure. I know partly it's because in patriarchal societies to control women and reproductive
Hmm.
system and all of that. But I feel like it's important for all the listeners to pause and see what's my relationship with pleasure. And if I have a negative thought about it, where is that coming from?
Mm, yeah, and again, to redefine what pleasure is, because pleasure does not explicitly have to do with sexuality, and pleasure does not equal sex. But I think oftentimes when we hear the word pleasure, we immediately go to sex, but that's not what it is. Pleasure is an experience that is nice and delightful, and it feels good, and it's energizing, and it's that good vibes, or however you want to describe it. But when we can pick it out in all of these different areas of our life, it makes it a lot easier to access in the bedroom. But if the only place that you are experiencing pleasure or trying to experience pleasure is in the bedroom, then it's no surprise that you're going to be disappointed because that's just not how it works. And you're putting so much pressure on this one moment that could be 10 to 60 minutes long. So that
Mhm.
in your whole life, you've got like 30 minutes a week that you might be in this place of pleasure. That's really hard to achieve. That's really hard to get to.
That's also parallel with kind of like binge eating disorder, right? Like what
Hmm.
happens in binging, people feel like I don't have the opportunity to experience this food. Therefore, I'm going to start having it. I'm just going to, I'll go all out and it gets out of control and all of those things that we talked about. With pleasure is the same. If you're kind of
Hmm.
like putting pleasure for like 20 minutes to carry the weight of the entire week that you had, that was like so mundane and like non-pleasurable, that's just like impact your experiences. So I love that you talked about living a pleasurable life, an orgasmic life, because that can be energetic all around. And in order for us to have a pleasurable life, it's something that you intentionally have to cultivate. It's not like life
Absolutely.
is just so hard that it's not going to happen by itself. So you have to work
Yeah.
on it.
It is, and it's so simple. It can be taking a sip of water in a way that feels good in your mouth. It can be stopping and literally smelling a rose, which is something that I do all the time because I really do love roses. I am that person that walks down the street with like my face in a bush, like, I definitely do that. It can be looking at the sunshine. It can be rubbing your arm. I mean, there are so many different ways that we can start to cultivate pleasure. And sensuality is about the senses. So, how can we tap into the senses more in a way that feels good? Because that is going to cultivate. All of this is a muscle. And if you're not working out that muscle, you don't know how to, then what are we doing? We don't know how to do it. You get to a situation and either you're going to be so, like you said, just so like grabby about it, or like I have to get it all, or you're going to be like I can't even recognize this in my body, or what this, or how to identify this, or anything like that.
Absolutely. I think, as you said, mindfulness is really important. Like you can bring the focus on whatever you're doing and turn it to a pleasurable experience. Most sex educated therapists have heard about will of consent and like
Hmm.
touching things in a way, even a mundane way that can kind of bring you pleasure, right? So it's just a matter of training your mind, having that lens and being present when you see flowers, when you're kind of like seeing something that you like, and working on elevating your experiences. Sometimes people say that, oh, I want to improve my sex life. what should I do that needs to be drastic. But sometimes it comes from like a visual diet. Maybe you want to kind of like improve your surrounding, the place that you have sex. So maybe you want to make it more sensual. It could be small or change, but I think as you mentioned, that it required intentionality, mindfulness, and willingness.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned your surroundings because oftentimes when you are thinking about your bedroom, you have maybe family portraits. Maybe you're looking
Mhm.
at your kids when you're trying to get a hard on. Maybe you're looking at your grandparents when you're getting eaten out. That's not going to work well for your pleasure or for your brain when you are looking around the room and all of a sudden you're looking in your parents' eyes. As your partner is going down on you, or you have your dog that's on the bed that's like keeps trying to lick somebody's butt. Like these are all distractors from your experience. So how can you create a safe space in the sexual space that you're in? Maybe it's a lighting change. Maybe you keep those pictures in the bedroom, fine if you want them there, but maybe you have a ritual where you turn them over, and that's part of the sex. That's part of prepping you for sex. Maybe you light a candle. I know that we want to kind of make fun of that stuff in film and television and rom-coms, like, oh, candles everywhere. But it helps. It sets a mood. And so much of getting ourselves transitioned from real life and all of the worries and all the troubles and all of those stresses into this moment of pleasure is it's changing that environment.
Absolutely. And with scents, some scents are arousing depending on our
Mm.
background, they are based on the research. So why not use that as a help? Like sometimes people say, what I have to do to increase passion, but it could be like these small changes that you make. And some of us are more visual, some of us are more sensual, kind of like focused more on texture. So like having that conversation with yourself and with your partner is important. What are some of the senses that are really important for me? Maybe if you're visual, you want to have a sexy image on the wall. So, or maybe
Mhm.
like you have a corner of the wall that when you're turning, when you're getting oral sex, maybe that you want to turn that way. Or you can have a section of your house that feels more sensual and like has a better texture. So that part is dedicated for you guys to have sex. And having these small secrets also can make sex more exciting and fun.
I love that. And as we're saying that, we are two sexuality professionals who are literally in sexy spaces right now. Right behind you, you have a woman that's sitting on someone's face, and I'm just looking at her butt. And so, if you're not on YouTube, you should get on YouTube right now and be watching this because it's great. And then for me, when I was, because I just redecorated my whole place in like one fell swoop, and my brief to myself and the person I was working with was I want to create a sensual space. I want the
Hmm.
entirety of my living space to feel sensual. And granted life is going to happen here and whatever, but that was a really really important thing for me because I wanted this to be a sensual creative space for me and for anybody who enters into this space. So again, it comes back to that intention. We're setting intentions and we're cultivating these areas of our homes, our lives, our brains, our bodies, and that does take a little bit of just like talking to yourself, figuring it out, maybe journal a little bit, write a list of all the things that turn you on, that make you feel sexy, and then look at that list and say, how can I add something to my room that cultivates this? Like what you said with scents, because everybody has different scents. So I love that. Cultivating sexy spaces.
You were just at my home and you saw that the boob vase that I had.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I love that not everybody knew that it was boobs. It was this beautiful little boob vase, which the whole thing is just boobs. Boobs, 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 boobs. And then you picked it up and there was chocolate. And it's like, who doesn't want chocolate out of a boob? And then you also had this beautiful vase that was all lips, which was really
Mm.
beautiful. And then I feel like the tea cup, the kettle, the teapot, and the cups that you had. I don't remember what they were. Were they also lips or boobs or something? They were
Like
something.
one side was lips and one was mustache.
Oh, that's cute. I don't know that I saw the mustache side. That's really cute. But it is those little fun things that we can put in our homes or in our spaces. And if you have kids, they're sneaky little things you can do. And to your point, like that's fun to have a sexy little secret, just to like have these little hidden pieces of sensuality or little nods to our eroticism to just wake us up a little bit, remind us
Mm.
what is here for us. Sexy little secrets. I love those. So another thing that you have that I really loved is you had a menu of options. So um, many of us have seen yes, no, maybe lists. I have a yes, no, maybe list. They're great. You can go to my website and get it. It's birdsandbeesdon'tfuck.com. But you have one that is more of a it's like different levels of menu and different levels. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I love the
Yeah.
creativity there.
Oh, thank you. When I talk to my client, what I realize, I always talk about like, okay, what was the best sexual experience that you had? And some of these experiences, going back to your point of doesn't need to arrive to climax, it was like a touchless experience, like maybe this encounter with a partner. And that was very juicy and exciting and no one came, but that was something that was like the experience is like peak of emotions and sensations. So when you're talking about it with people, it's kind of important, and also yourself thinking, what was it about that experience that was so exciting for me? And we do have those experiences. Some of us, when we are kind of feeling stuck and not experiencing orgasm, you just go to that fantasy and, oh my God, like it's just so hot. It takes you home. So I
Yeah.
think like knowing those things and kind of reviewing it, what is it about this behavior, this action in this interaction that was so juicy for me? And there are different themes based on research on what are some of the things that are juicy for people. So for some people is things that give them a sense of ecstasy, kind of feeling of like having this emotions, like a kind of heightened emotions of joy, pleasure, appreciate it. Sometimes it's about feeling of guilt, right? You need an element
Mm.
of guilt to really turns you on. Going back to the my upbringing, I work with lots of diverse people, diverse backgrounds, and I figure out like taboo and things related to kind of like a shame, kinky stuff. It's really common in my community because like we eroticize those things. And so guilt could be one, anger could be one. So you need to
Mm.
feel angry sometimes in order for you to feel alive. And kind of going through like there are like 5 different categories, going through your behaviors that are really exciting for you, those memories, those fantasies. I invite you to think about what is the theme underneath. And that will help you to get to know yourself and what kind of scripts I can write based on these themes, like writing a screenplay of your sexy life. Okay, I need maybe to feel kind of excited, or I need to feel guilty, or I need to feel humiliated. What can I do to create that kind of scenario? What behaviors can help me to get there? And there's galaxy of options. So that can also open so many different things that you can do. And I always often recommend people to talk to your partner about it, about what's the core erotic emotion for you, for them, and what level of kind of like spiciness you want to have when you're kind of incorporating that. Some people are feeling that we are in a season of life that we want to kind of feel mild experiences of kind of this emotion. So it could be choosing the behavior that's like milder. Maybe you want to kind of experience with like light impact play. Maybe you are at a place that you feel like I want things spicy. So that's
Mhm.
also kind of knowing that you can change the degree of the behaviors that you're engaging in. And if people are interested, like Jack Morin has a wonderful book on arousal and erotic mind. That would be a great resource for people.
Yeah. And what are those five categories so people know?
I don't know top of my mind.
Oh,
I
okay.
remember I
I
had
think
a sheet.
I know. I might have your sheet here. Hang on. I'm gonna see if
Ooh,
I do. Because I keep all those. So hang on.
I love that.
Yeah. Let's see. I thought I had it close, but I think I have it. I have a like a an intimacy box where I have all of my
Oh, I
like,
love that.
yeah,
Resources.
it's well, yeah, I have like all sorts of resources. I thought I had it in a different little box here, but I do. And so, well, this might be actually worth talking about anyway. So I have, like my box of toys and all of like the lubes and the toys and all the things. And then because I'm an educator, I also have the box of things that I use, that I get from other educators, from handouts, or little things that I might use as models that I don't use in my personal life. So it's fun to just like have your little box of toys. All Everything we're talking about here, it's all tools to have in your toolbox, whether it's a psychological tool or a physical tool or a combination of the both, which is, a list, I would argue, is kind of like that combination of the two. Um, but yeah, it's so important that we understand that desire is not spontaneous. These movie moments, as I call them, they are very much on purpose, the same way that a sex scene in a movie that you find so erotic is so very much on purpose. We planned every aspect, especially now that we have, intimacy coordinators. I talk to the director and I get every single aspect of that vision out of that person that they didn't even think about, because I'm asking all of the questions. And we can do the same thing with our sex lives, asking every sort of question that we can think of, extracting information so that you can take that information and you can create an experience based off of the boundaries of the person who is going to be actually doing that experience. But it's the more comfortable we can get talking about all of these things and using the tools at our disposal, like the menu that you're talking about, like a yes, no, maybe list. These are all tools to help us communicate so that we better understand what we actually want and how to create that experience, because these are all experiences. Sex does not it is not just, straight sex, penis hard in vagina, boom, boom, boom. He comes and we're done. Like that's just not sex. It's
I
one
agree with
small
you.
piece of it. And if
I'll
you're not,
send go.
oh no, go ahead.
I'll send you the link to the I'll send you the PDF so you can share it
Yes.
with the listeners. I don't want them to feel like missed out, like, oh, we're
No.
talking about these things.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Because I want to put it in the show notes for sure.
sure.
And then oh gosh, there was something. Oh, yes. One thing that I have started to do is, after I have a really juicy sexual experience, I will write it down. I will write down everything that happened in that night. First of all, because it's nice to come back to, and if you do wind up building a relationship with that person, or if you're in a relationship with that person, it's just like a really beautiful memory to have. But to your point of helping you identify what are the things that I really like, what are the things that turn me on, you can start an erotic journal. And every single time you have an erotic experience, write it down, document it. What happened? What were you wearing? What was the other person wearing? Where were you? What were the things that you remember? What was the scene? What did you smell? What did you hear? What were the lighting? What was the lighting like? How did you get touched? Just try, because our brains forget. If you don't write it down immediately, you're not going to remember. So when you try to sit down and do this exercise of remembering and fantasizing about a real life event, it's going to be really hard sometimes. So if you have a really juicy experience, I invite you to journal on that a little bit. Get a little book. Maybe you have a little sexy little lock on it if you don't want people to find it, if you've got kids or, roommates or whatever. But start writing those things down, because that is your toolbox and that is your menu of things to come back to. That's a great starting off point.
That's a gold mine, right? Like writing, like erotic journaling for a number of different
Mm.
reasons. First of all, for self-discovery, like our sexual desires changes, evolve, and you get to know yourself more with having those writing. Also, that can, the more that, especially for vulva owners, the more you practice your erotic mind, the stronger it gets. It's like planting sexy seeds. That's
Mm.
something that society allow, like teach cisgender men more growing up, but that's okay to think about sexy stuff. So sometimes their desire is more accessible when they're younger. But for vulva owners, like the more you are planting this sexy seed, the more your desire will be available. And I love that you were talking about it could be something also can help you to kind of like build this story of like maybe that how an experience relationship evolve. I love that.
Yeah, because we also, when we think about romantic relationships, oftentimes we're not thinking about the sex. We're not thinking about the sexual chemistry. We're not necessarily putting the same weight on the sexual compatibility as we are on the personal compatibility or the romantic or financial or whatever other compatibilities. But that is such an important part of these relationships that we're building if they are in that realm of romance and a sexual partner, and it's okay for you to put some weight on that. In fact, you're probably going to have better success in your relationship when you do put some weight on that, because it is an important aspect of your relationship that will always come back to bite you if you're ignoring it when you're getting into something.
That is so true. I know there's this colleague that's saying that all of the divorce, it happens because of money or sex.
Yeah,
So,
100%. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, for the comedians that I have on the show, I give them a pop quiz, but you are an expert, and so that means that you get to just share whatever it is that you want. What is like one thing that you wish people knew more about, or that you want to share, or just leave people with? What's your little nugget?
well, one thing that I talked earlier, but I wanted to highlight it more here is that desire is something that you're cultivating, you're planting, as you talked about. Sometimes it could be spontaneous, but especially in longer term relationship, when you are in a monogamous long term relationship, that's just like more of something that you can channel at times. And erotic mind is something that you want to make sure you're investing in. You can do your erotic journaling. I know many cisgender women love listening to erotica audio. Like that could be something that you do. You want to make sure that you're keeping that part of you alive, even if you're not in a relationship. I tell people that like have this self-care moment of solo experiences. Like you don't need to feel the pressure of you have to orgasm, but it's important to kind of like connect with your body with pleasure. So have this on your calendar, like maybe 10 minutes every day I do something pleasurable, whether it's sexual or it could be sensual, and that can help you feel more alive, playful, and it will help you to be more creative, because when you are connecting with that sexual energy, that can help you get more connected with life. That's been my experience for years of working with clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And that erotic energy, it's all around us. Just like you said, it's not necessarily the sex, it's everything. And we can cultivate that energy and live in that energy, because sexual energy is vitality. Sex and life, they come from the same areas. So, sex, creativity, vitality, they're all connected. So I love that. I think that's so, so beautiful. Where can people find you?
Oh, thank you for, first of all, inviting me. People can check my podcast, Sexology podcast, wherever they're listening to this show. And if they are curious about me, they can check out my content on Instagram at Sexology Podcast.
Amazing. And you have great content. So thank you so, so much for joining me today. This was such a wonderful conversation. I enjoy you so much. I love everything you do. And again, thank you so much for inviting me yesterday to your sexy networking group. It was fantastic. So many incredible people in your world. So that was just so wonderful. If you like this podcast, then please like it, rate it, subscribe. We are trying to build here. This is just a little baby podcast. So if you are one of my little baby listeners, then help us out. You can follow me on at Birds and Bees Don't Fuck without the U. That's also the website. It's in all the places. I've got the yes, no, maybe list and just other resources there. So that's it for now. But thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.